This is the Powered Up Podcast, show 117.
And literally, I just flip-flop them, and we all sit around a table, and they've got their whiteboards, they've got their books, and in an ideal world, the other group is working really diligently, quietly, just getting along and not causing any trouble and staying on task. It's the best that we can do.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Kennerman, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Matt. I only teach fourth grade Rogers. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I didn't always only teach fourth grade, just only fourth grade as a regular ed teacher. Ken, you only ever taught fifth grade.
I taught STEM, so I taught grades 1
Malarkey, that doesn't count. That's a fake
and
teacher.
Now I'm teaching 6 through 12.
Just kidding. It's not.
I taught high school business today.
Congratulations! I'm so proud.
I'm the jack of all trades compared to you, the only fourth grade teacher, Rogers.
Oh my goodness!
Everyone will know what we're getting at when we meet our guest tonight. It was a great conversation. It was different than we've had lately. I feel like we actually kind of recentered ourselves on the foundation of this podcast with just talking to teachers.
Yeah,
and lately, we've had a lot of great guests that are different, and I've really enjoyed those conversations. We've had psychologists on, we've had learning coach on, and I've really enjoyed those conversations because I feel like it's opened our horizons a little bit on the conversations we can have on this show. But at the same time, it felt really good just to talk to a classroom teacher tonight.
I totally agree, and boy, oh boy, did we get back into it with a incredibly unique and incredible teacher. Yeah, absolutely wild. We got off the call with her and just a tremendous amount of respect for what she does day in and day out, and the challenges she overcomes, and just the wisdom she brings to her students.
Yeah, definitely. And also the correlation between that and what I think many of our guests will see in their own classroom. And it's just a reminder of how unique perspectives, whether it be the demographic of students we teach, the community we teach in, or the setup of your school, creates opportunities to do best by students. But a lot of times, those strategies to overcome those unique obstacles boil down to similar strategies, maybe just with a different focus or a different approach. And so I think our listeners tonight as they go through the show, will be able to really pull out some key strategies and also help center their mindset in doing what's best for students. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think when I first was in this conversation, I felt like, how could I relate to what she was sharing? Because she teaches a wildly different demographic, location. I'll mention a little bit later in the episode, talking about how I have preconceived notions about the students that she teaches because of where she teaches or the environment that she teaches in. And what we boiled down to was she goes in and does very similar to what I do every single day, regardless of the number of kids in front of her or the challenges that she faces compared to what we deal with on the daily. So, really, really awesome insight and just a fantastic episode.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into that conversation with Samantha Bovat.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
Hi, Samantha. Welcome to the Powered Up Podcast. How you doing tonight?
I am super. How about yourself?
I am doing fantastic. I had an awesome day today, so I am really excited to continue that momentum and jump into this conversation with us. So kick things off, introduce yourself to our audience, let us know where you are coming from, and give us an idea of what your career in education has looked like.
My name is Samantha Bobat, and I am from Brookline, Vermont, which is the southern part of Vermont, just about 20 minutes from Mount Snow and Stratton, so right in a little valley in southern Vermont. I teach in a small school in Wardsboro, Vermont. It is a pre-K through 6 school, and we have 49 students in the entire school. I teach in 6th grade. I have 3 grown children, and when I was pregnant for my first child, I decided that I would go back to school for my master's degree and get my certification for education. Then, life happens. I did not pursue my education career because I also got my master's degree at the same time. So I did 2 of those things at the same time. And back then, it was very expensive to hire a teacher with a master's degree, especially one that didn't have any experience. So I worked for myself. I worked for a bank. I had varying careers throughout my time. And then when my kids were just a little bit older, I ended up working in central office for our local supervisory union. And I was the assistant to the superintendent. And I was so good at that I ended up being the assistant to the director of special education right after that in the same office. It's a very small office, so we all continued to work together. And then it was then that I decided that it was time to go back and utilize my teaching license. There was all the new Common Core standards, and I thought that was really cool. I thought that the new testing platform we used, the SBACs, was really the whole thing was interesting. So I took a teaching job in Wardsboro, where I am now, as a 5-6 teacher. I didn't really have a choice on my grade level. I just landed there and have been there for 7 years. And now I'm trying to consider next steps. Could be administration, could be get out of Dodge.
So first of all, for this show, when we first started, I had 2 clear goals that I shared with Matt when we were finding guests. I said, I don't want to talk to our friends, at least for the first X number of shows, for the first a lot of shows. And I want to talk to a teacher in every state. So I'm actually really excited to remember you're from Vermont, because you're our first Vermont teacher that we've had on this show. So that's another state that we can add to our guest map that we have on our website. And when we have teachers on our show that have had a wide range of career experience outside of education, I always love to tap into that experience and how that's affected your mindset as a 5-6 teacher. So how do you feel your experience in the banking industry and in central office? What perspectives or experiences do you feel you learned and gained from those jobs that has an impact on the way you facilitate your classroom, or the teachable moments that you take advantage of with your class that you would not have if you left high school, went to college, and went right back into the education field and never left that echo chamber of education?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I never anticipated being a teacher for life. I thought it would be a great career because I have children and I wanted to be on their schedule, you know. Um, but having real experience in the world outside of education really changes the way I go through about my daily business. Um, Teacher contracts, uh, just the rules around what teachers expect to have to do, and what, as a business person, I've expected to do all my life without getting paid, without being compensated, without um, thinking twice about it. You have to work a few extra hours. You work a few extra hours. It's not any big deal. Um, but the real life experience of having kids and being an adult going in to teaching and not right out of school. I can't imagine being a teacher right out of college. Actually, I was quite surprised by the lack of instant respect for a teacher when I went in to schools, which is really interesting to me. But um, there's so many things that I bring from the outside world because I'm a networker. I am a connector of businesses, and I really try to get to know other businesses, business owners. That I guess the one thing that I bring to the table in my classroom is really understanding my students pretty quickly and developing the relationships with them, and the lack of fear of parents. I'm not afraid to talk to adults. I'm not afraid to talk to children. And I think that oftentimes teachers want, if they start out as being teachers and haven't dealt with adults, they don't like to speak in front of adults. They're more hesitant to uh, be honest with the adults of the children that they work for. And that's not something that is a problem for me because I've always worked with adults and now I'm working with children. So it's kind of like the reverse of those reverse lessons.
So first off, can I just ask a clarifying? You said you kind of struggled when you walked into a school, the respect of a teacher. Are you saying that from the lens of from adults or from the students? You expected which population to provide you, or both, that respect?
Um, Really, it was the students, the surprise that, hey, I'm a teacher. I can walk in and kids are going to like look up to me and, you know, they're going to earn my respect and not the other way around. And I was quite surprised by that.
Yeah, I think we struggle, and I think part of that is also the grade level that you end up being assigned to. If you end up going to a second grade classroom, you are that child's hero by all means. If you start getting into those upper elementary and into that middle school, the uh, the built-in respect might not be there. It needs to be slightly more earned, and even those outside experiences can lend to that development as you're referring to. Um, One of the things that I'll open my question with is Ken and I have had two different experiences with the beginning of our teaching career. I love that he asked that question because neither of us come into the classroom with outside experience. We have outside experience from the additional time in our school outside our school day, but Ken was a sub for a period of time and did a variety of different roles before signing a contract and staying with the school that he was in, which I think is tending to be the more common trend for educators coming into the field. I, on the other hand, walked across the stage, got my diploma, and walked into the first day of school the next day because I graduated in December and a job was waiting for me the next day. And I'm envious of both of your scenarios. Ken, obviously, being within the school district environment his entire career, but in various roles, created a hunger and a drive and your, Samantha, outside experience bringing perspective and work ethic, and maybe just a little bit different adult to the classroom as Mrs. Bovat, instead of, you know, looking just slightly older and slightly taller than the fourth graders I was about to teach. The roundabout question that I'm getting for is, what are those type features, if you could boil it down, both of you, that like for Ken's scenario, if he knew there was a job securely at the end of his subbing, then subbing can be a very comfortable and beneficial period. But when you're subbing, the only thing you're worried about is how you're going to land your contract. How, in those moments early on into your career in education, were you able to kind of landmark, almost like bookmark, I need to remember what this feels like. I need to remember what this, because I see both of your paths leading to a tremendous amount of drive in educators. Whereas someone like me, I feel like I was gifted a position, and I don't know if that drive is as ingrained beyond just intrinsic motivation, if that makes sense.
I want to tap into what you said about the respect factor there, Samantha. And I think it's an interesting conversation because I think it's kind of a blending of, I don't know if I would go as far as to say as changes in our society, but just kind of the way of the world today. I think when we were kids, that we did just respect the teacher because it was an authority figure. And there's something to be said about showing respect towards adults. And I think there's a difference between showing respect towards and having the respect of an individual. At least I differentiate those two. And I think you show respect towards anyone, right? But the respecting of others, I hold that very valuably. I look for people to earn my respect, and I look to earn their respect at the same time. I don't expect anyone to hold that of me. And now as an instructional coach, I'm constantly popping into different classrooms. And just today, I taught 3 business classes to help a brand new teacher out. And when I am leading an entire class of high school students that I've never worked with before, I have the mindset of how can I establish respect with these students as quickly as humanly possible, because I've never taught them before. And chances are I might not work with this class again, or very infrequently. And I look for different strategies. I look for ways to have a conversation with one student to show that I respect them as an individual. Or I'm in a district that I taught in for a while, so some of my former 5th grade students are now high school students. So if I have any of those in there, I attracted them right away and almost allow them to help create credibility amongst their peers. No, they can say like, yeah, he was a cool teacher, or, you know, I had him as a teacher, he was awesome. So I think it's important for teachers to have that mindset that we do need to earn the respect of students, as well as the students, you know, they need to earn our respect. I think it's a mutual back and forth between them. So how have you taken that experience and that kind of epiphany moment for you and developed it into a way that you are establishing that rapport and relationships with students, like you said, that you find so valuable?
I guess I can answer both your questions probably at the same time, and that is, I walked into the school with confidence of knowing who I am, that I'm a confident professional, that I have the skills to and the ability to learn from other people, that I'm not afraid to make mistakes, and I'm not afraid to own my mistakes. And I think that is one big part of developing a relationship with students. But also, I think what's critical is to find your style in the classroom that really suits you, that really encompasses who you are, and be genuine with the kids. You know, don't pretend that you're someone you're not. Don't pretend that you're, better than them. Really understand who they are, where they're coming from. How can you make connections with them? Really is what it's all about. And I'll give you an example. Wardsboro is a really small neighborhood. I actually have connections now because my son is married to someone in the in the neighborhood, in the school, and so I actually have my son's nieces and nephews in my classroom. So it's a really tight knit community. But I'm not from that community. I didn't know all the players in the community. But in when COVID hit, so I had been there for 3 years. I had such a good relationship with my families and my students. I think that's an additional piece is the connection to the families, not just the students, but making a connection to the families. That when COVID hit and we had to turn on a dime to go remote, I had 100% participation every day, whether they could get connected or not. The parents and the kids felt it was important enough that I had developed a relationship that they valued coming to my classroom enough that they would make it every day, whether their connection was stinky or or it was really great, whether they did all the work or they didn't. They were present because they knew it was important to me. And I really believe that. I believe that it was because I really wanted them there. I care about them. And I show them that I care about them every day. And I start every day with, got a blank slate. Yesterday was yesterday. You come in today. We're going to start from scratch. I don't hold a grudge. I'm not going to pretend I'm not who I am. I love you. I don't have to like you today if you're misbehaving, So I believe that I show enough caring, and I want to do a good job for them. And you know what? I know that some days are better than others. And when I get mad, they know it. And I apologize. We regroup, we discuss it. I own it. They own it. And we just move on, But I think coming in with a confidence of my, who I want to be and what my classroom needs to be like. Um, and, and that's just another piece of fitting into your peer community in your whole school team, right? Um, Being able to stand up for yourself and say, hey, this is how my classroom works. I like music in the morning. I'm going to listen to music in the morning. My kids like it. I like it. I'm going to do it. So I don't know. Does that answer your question, Ken? Or
Yeah,
Matt?
I think that leads into, and you are. So I'm going to use. Please clarify if I have a preconceived notion, but being in the Northeast, there is a level of, I don't want to say that the value of education is any different, but being in a place like Southern Vermont, outside, not too far from, I would imagine, Boston, and really some pretty affluent parts of our nation, there is a general value for education that contributes to uh, I believe, and I want to give you respect and say your 100% participation is incredible, and that speaks more than anything to you and the relationships that you made with kids. There's also a uniqueness of the environment that you teach in. I mean, the numbers of your school is something that is astonishing. That stuck out to me immediately, Ken. I'm sure that stuck out to you. There are dynamics in that type of environment that my natural thought is, wow, like I've taught a class of 29 kids before in one single grade in a larger building and thought that was a great year. What are some of those attributes in whether it's pivoting for COVID or just general instruction to say, hey, Samantha, I feel like I can learn a lot from your experience in your environment, or to the people that say, I work in a building of 500 kids. How can I listen to the guidance that you've learned when you don't know what I'm going through type scenario?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because teachers are teachers, right? Good teaching practice, regardless of how many kids, regardless of the scenario, is good teaching. But what do you feel like, either positives, negatives, dispel maybe my expectations, anything in that realm?
So there's a couple of things. One is one of the beauties of being in a small school is I know every single kid in that school. I can I recognize every single parent of the children in the school. I have conversations. I can walk into anybody's classroom, and I do all the time. And I go in and on my, my kids are in PE, so I go wander into the pre-K classroom and I sit around and I ask them what they're doing and why are they having snack and what are they reading about. And I walk into the 1-2 classroom, and because we have all multi-age classrooms in our school, which is a whole nother story
Yeah,
altogether.
I want to stop you there as you continue with this. Can you describe again the setup of your school, the amount of students? Because I was very curious to learn more about that. So add that in as you continue.
All right. So in our school, there's pre-K, which is 3-year-olds through 6th grade. We are all multi-age classrooms. There's 4 classrooms. There's 3, 4, and 5 in one, which is pre-KK. First and second in another classroom. 3 and 4, and I teach 5th and 6th. So I have recess duty. And so I have all the 1st and 2nd graders and the 3rd and 4th graders with some other teachers. And so we interact with the kids on recess duties. 2 of us teachers are our recess duty. Like, we don't have extra bodies to do stuff. So that's another thing. Like, we're not afraid to, jump on lunch duty because someone's out sick, or if the PE teacher isn't there, so what? I'll go in the gym with my kids. Like, just that mentality of we're doers, we're everyone's all hands on deck, right? So you walk in, all heck's breaking loose because it's just a casual, regular day where the art teacher's out sick, the nurse is not coming in, the nurse that we have 2 times a week, like, all these things are it's a very minimalistic, I guess you could say, as far as like the extra resources. But what's great is, my 1st and 2nd grade teacher might say, hey, Johnny is, he's having a really rough time. Can he come down to your classroom and, take a time out, and could you just check in with him when he's doing that? Sure thing. Like, those are the kinds of things that are so, like, crazy. Like, just to think that I know every single student, that we can have conversations as a staff, and every one of us knows who we're talking about, and what the family dynamic might be, or what outside forces have impacted, whether it's the recent snowstorm or whatever. Those kinds of things are really fantastic. And then there's that small school aspect where in my classroom, kids can't get away with anything. And I can't ignore stuff because I can ignore a lot of stuff, but the other kids can't ignore a lot of stuff. So there's no like sneaking around, and they're so bad at being discreet that they just can't figure that. I'm like, could you just be discreet? Like, try it out. Nope, they can't do it. So it gets familial, and most of them are family. So that's kind of a funny statement to say, but by 5th and 6th grade, they're so close that they just can't stand each other anymore. And the 6th graders are ready to get the heck out, and the 5th graders are ready to jump on board. So right now, we're in the springtime. Nobody wants to be in my classroom because the kids are just like turning the corner. The 5th grades are anxious to be the next grade, and the 6th graders are like, I'm out of here, and I'm so sick of looking at you. Like, it's really quite comical. I mean, literally, I have two sibling pairs and a cousin in one classroom, and they're actually the cousins to my granddaughter, who is now in the 3-year-old program in that same school. So I have her in my school as well. So there's so many fantastic things that happen in that regard. Um, there's not a lot of money in Wardsboro. They're hardworking families. A lot of them work on the mountains because we have Mount Snow and Stratton, which are two of the bigger mountains. We fall right in between them, literally, um, and they um, they work really hard. But it's tough. There's not a lot of options, for them. They can't make a choice
Right.
to
And
go
I'm
very
sure
many
I'm sure
places.
your school is really the centerpiece of the community, it would seem, just because they're all going to that school, they all know each other. And and can you speak to that at all, of just how the school is serving as kind of a bedrock, or that, the nucleus of the community, and how that
Yeah,
maybe impacts things that happen at school?
we talk about this a lot, and I'm sure it's not new for any educator or any school system since COVID. And quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about COVID, but it really has changed how we look at things. Um, we've always been there for the parents, the kids, before school, after school, making sure that there's programs that are available, making sure that there's extra clothes in the closet, that there's shoes in the closet, that there's school supplies. They don't have breakfast, we feed them breakfast. Like there were the days before the free meals that all the teachers would be bringing in extra granola bars or crackers. Like we wanted to make sure that nobody ever, was hungry or unclothed. And we have some really fantastic organizations that provide jackets and snow boots and snow pants and things that are just phenomenal to supporting the kids. And that comes at a cost, I think, because it's expected now that the parents rely on the school to provide all of these things. And that's wearing. That's starting to wear down our it's just starting to wear us down, like to come in with all of these expectations. So it is the building that is the emergency shelter, because it's the building that has a generator. So we're one of the local schools that actually could go to school if there's power outages, which happens, which is great. There's so many relatives in our area that it really is it's like the family hub. They just expect that everyone's going to work together, everyone's going to play together. We have to draw from multiple grades if we want to have any kind of sports teams. So it's inherently the place where parents go. I mean, I remember, I'm not from Vermont, I'm from Massachusetts, but don't tell too many people. Um, they all know. We live in a small town. I don't live in Brookline. But until our kids were in school, we were on the outskirts of the town. So even though everyone knew who we were, we had no way to connect with anybody until our kids went to school. And I think that that's probably the same thing at this elementary school. It seems to be the same case with all of these local schools, because they're not really big schools. I mean, there's maybe 100 at the most in any of our elementary schools. So they're not really big schools. And in our S supervisory union, they're spread out, quite a bit. So the school is what is the glue, or the means to draw in any community members, because if you can just imagine living in the old Smith house, whoever that was, whenever that was. I don't know who the Smith was. I don't I would never know what you're talking about. The road down there past the tree with the thing in it. Yeah, oh my God. No, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. So I think schools in rural Vermont they're the safe haven for kids and families. Um, but the resources that go outside of those schools, depending on where you live, are not so easily accessible. So the schools are relied upon to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and it can be kind of hard.
Ken, I don't know if you feel this way. I feel a little bit, uh, not that I can quite relate, Samantha, but where I teach is much different than where I grew up. People where I grew up went to school and then they found community in the parks and the community and the access to everything else around us. I grew up right outside in a suburb of Philadelphia. So some families chose to go into Philadelphia. Some people went in further into the country, and some people just went to the local mall. Like that is what we did. But there wasn't a whole lot of dependence on the school district besides, oh, I'm gonna put my school jersey on for this sporting event, or I'm gonna represent the school for this choir. And the school district that I teach in now, there is still access to a lot within probably a half an hour to an hour. You have a major city within that realm, still being Philadelphia and the outskirts of it. But I start to see how much more dependent on the school as the hub it really is. And Ken, we've had some guests on that I have struggled to relate to, not because of them by any means, but to understand how important the role of teacher is, because how important school is to the community they live in. And it is astonishing. We have a friend of ours that lives out south of Pittsburgh, where some of the stories in the middle of winter when there's not enough heat to heat the house that they have to go through to be able to do that. And here he is trying to teach them how to 3D print, in that realm. Like those don't seem to match priorities whatsoever. Or a teacher that's driving school bus plus coaching plus teaching plus subbing when he's on off periods.
Mm-hmm.
People dealing with gang violence. And we have had so many guests from different backgrounds that have so many responsibilities that I think it's fascinating to listen to what you're saying so calmly as what to me is red flags. And they don't belong as red flags by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But they're
Mm-hmm.
just, I love your approach, and I wish that more educators recognized you're happy and proud to be in the position you're in, even though you're asked to do a little bit more. So, you know what? My school district ran out of pencils, and my kids had to use pencils with like erasers that don't erase super well because the good pencils aren't used. Like there are those style complaints that every teacher is striving to commiserate over. But it's more than anything, appreciation for you doing what feels like a tougher job. That's also a more important job, which I can hear you say it's wearing on you because you fill so many roles. But I just wonder how many people really have the spectra, the community feel. Like, are more educators, Samantha, in your shoes, or are more educators in the shoes that like they leave school at 4 o'clock, they go home and their family has a plan, whether it's working with the family, entertainment with the family, whatever the case may be, it is self-sufficient. It is something that through our podcast, I've been really enlightened to that reality.
I think it obviously is geographically impacted on that answer, because in the more rural areas, people are traveling a larger distance to get to that school. There's less schools in an area, so more people are associated with that school district. Whereas where I live, I live in the district I teach in now, but I didn't 6 months ago. And a large majority of our teachers do not live in our district because I can drive to five other school districts in 25 minutes from where I teach, because we're in a more populated area. So, and with that, there's seven elementary schools in our district. So I still do believe that the school district is a centerpiece of the community in a different way. And I think it's important for teachers to recognize their role in that community, whether it is showing up for family nights that are scheduled for the school, or participating as a coach, or going to a game, or supporting some of the different events. I still think it's important for us to be a part of that community. And I have found the more that I engross myself in this community, uh, living here now, and even slightly before, it just gives me a different perspective on how things operate, and what the community is about. And even like now, I'm taking my son to swim lessons that happen at our high school, because we now live in the area, and I'm seeing the high school athletes that are there at night training and weightlifting and preparing for sports, something that I just never really thought about. So I think the more that you are involved in the community in different capacities, just the more that it opens up your perspective to what everybody's doing on a daily and a weekly basis, both the students and the teachers. So I want to pivot the conversation a little bit, but still focusing on the way you interact and the way you teach on a daily basis. So you have fifth and sixth. So the first thing that jumps into my head is you have students 2 years in a row, because they're with you for the fifth grade and sixth grade. How are you handling this on a curriculum level, and from a teaching lens? So like right now, whatever you're teaching to your fifth graders and your sixth graders, next year you're going to have half of that class again. So what are you teaching next year? How are you handling that curriculum on that 2 year cycle basis, where half of your class is sticking around, and then and half of them are leaving?
Um, that's a really good question. Having multi-age classes is difficult to say the least, but also having kids for 2 years is uh, really a special opportunity, because you get to know the kids, and you understand their learning styles, and you can work with them for 2 years. So when I did my student teaching forever ago, I taught in a multi-age 1, 2, 3 classroom, but they had team teachers. There was 3 teachers, and they all taught one. So they divided and conquered the 1, 2, 3 grades, depending on what the subject was or the skill level was or what have you. So that's how it kind of, I wasn't too freaked out about teaching fifth and sixth, but it's, it's a whole lot of work, because I have 2 report cards. I have 2 different standards to meet, but knowing that the administration understands that you can't hit everything teaching both those grades. You can't teach all of the fifth grade standards. You can't teach all of the sixth grade standards. So you have to be willing and able to walk the middle of the line on occasion. So depending on the skill level of the group, you can either go back to fifth grade and reteach, or you can bring the fifth graders up to the sixth grade level. And you can always reteach certain things. Literacy is a whole lot easier to do that with, because as an elementary teacher anyway, you're differentiating across the board. And high school teachers will say, oh my gosh, I don't know how you guys do that when you've got now 2 grades and teaching all of the subjects, right? I teach all the subjects and the 2 grades. Math, however, I teach two completely separate lessons. So my fifth graders get the fifth grade curriculum, and my sixth graders get the sixth grade curriculum. And I have to figure out how to um, make the most impact every day and keep the other, to keep the one grade independent while I'm working with my, another grade. And you just do it. It's not always pretty. You have to kind of eat crow saying I just couldn't get to that. But I think the beauty is, um, I just shove things in everywhere I can possibly go. And I use a lot of language in my classroom, and I don't shy away from jumping on every opportunity to throw in a quick math lesson or um, whatever, because I know that eventually by sixth grade they're going to need to know this stuff anyway. So what if they hear it and they don't get it? So I'm never afraid to um, downplay or talk down just because they might not know it. Um, like some of my kids will say, one kid said to me one day, he says, "Mrs. Bovat, could you please stop using such big words?" And another student said, "Oh, you can forget that. She is not going to stop using those big words. So you might want to just ask her what it means, because she's not going to change." So it's incredible. Sorry. It's
Making me think of summer with that.
Yeah.
my phone never rings. It's my sister. It's my sister, who is also an educator. She teaches science in out in Arizona. So generally, it's a lot of extra work. It's an incredible amount of work, but the kids so much more when they walk in and when they leave, that you can say, "So what, they didn't get that last year. I know now where they're starting. I don't have to rethink. I don't have to say, oh my gosh, do they know how to write a sentence? Do they know how to write a paragraph? I already know." And then I can just keep shoving them forward, keep pushing them to be better in the year.
So in my own experience teaching, when I was learning sport, I had fourth and fifth grade. And Ken, I feel like I loved September and October, September through October, because I felt like I was so productive having my kids again, because I knew where I specifically left off with them and where I was going to continue with them. And I felt like that was wonderful. On the flip side, Samantha, like you're mentioning, once you hit April, it is really, really difficult, because not only have you gone through the springtime with them once, but now you're going through it again with many of them. And that is a really, really difficult position to be in. So I had this thought. I had a conversation the other day, and I don't know what you would think about this, Ken. If you were in this position, Samantha, you don't have the privilege as much. But once state testing is done, one of the things our school district was playing with is actually shifting our kids to the next grade level. So obviously it would probably be a short window of time. And I don't know, this is maybe a thought position more than anything. There's a little bit of, you want to have the end of the year with your class and wrap up certain aspects. You've built such a connection with them, but a window of time where you could do some of those pre-meeting activities, and obviously rosters aren't set, but you could go through that orientation in the weeks of May and make it so much more productive. I mean, Ken, I'm sure you were doing something incredibly productive for the very last few moments you had kids, but they would have a little preview, so you could almost give the kids a little bit of fourth grade light experience, new teacher, and maybe it's a day, maybe it's a few days, but then they come back to their homeroom teacher, their grade level teacher, they wrap up the school year, and it gives you a little bit of familiarity of the room and the expectation, and possibly you're jumping off, you choose one or two concepts or projects that you leap out of, because Samantha, I imagine that's kind of what you do already. You don't get the choice though, obviously not inviting, but you're going into these other grade levels. And I always found myself, especially this time of year, going into the third grade classrooms and making my face more present anyway. I don't have any say, nor do the kids who they have, but it was something I was thinking about.
Yeah, to respond to that, I think there's two aspects that you're looking at that you want to accomplish at the beginning of the year. It's setting expectations and getting comfortable with the students, getting to know the students getting to know you. And Samantha, like you had said, year two with your students, you already have that. And I'm sure establishing routines has become much easier for you after your first year in this fifth, sixth grade role, because your sixth graders, they set the tone, right? They know what to expect in your classroom, and the fifth graders, they just fall right in line. It's a lot easier when you have approximately half of your class kind of picking up that establishment that you have in terms of routines and management and those strategies. So to answer what you're saying, Matt, I don't think it's a bad idea at all if that's the goal. But if the goal is curriculum, then I don't think what you said is necessary. But if you think about the way a school year goes, you have state testing around the end of April, and then in theory, they should have been taught everything for that grade level, and that's what they're being assessed on. So if your goal is to establish community and classroom routines and getting to know the next grade level, then moving up does make sense. I would argue that they should already know who they're moving up to, and they should be going to that class, not just any teacher in that grade level, because it kind of defeats the purpose, because every teacher carries their classroom a little bit different. But also, why aren't we, if the goal is curriculum, why isn't the current fourth grade teacher just starting with fifth grade concepts after state testing? Because in theory that should have already been covered. I'm just saying, I'm just talking about, obviously there are realistic pieces here, but just the mindset of, I'm a fourth grade teacher, I can only teach fourth grade objectives. Why not start to raise the rigor, like you're doing on a daily basis, Samantha? Why not raise the rigor of what you're doing towards the end of the year, both in passion and in engagement and in fun and creativity, but also in those expectations and standards? I'd love to hear a little bit more just about, especially the math classroom, like you described. Just like, what does your structure look like in terms of facilitating two different concepts to your students? Are you using small group instruction? How are you utilizing that? I love talking small group instruction. So do you have any tips or strategies that you have utilized to facilitate small group instruction that even for teachers that are teaching one grade level can pull out those strategies to facilitate that?
Yeah. I so this in the last couple of years, our supervisory unit has really latched on to math menus and providing the opportunity for kids to work independently while small group instruction is happening. Now, small group instruction is kind of a funny saying because the grades are a small group. I have 6 fifth graders and 4 sixth graders. So they're all small groups, but I flip flop. I spend a half an hour with one group teaching direct instruction, and then send them off to do independent work, which is furthering their instruction. They're doing their practice work. They have choices that they can do. They can play games. They can do their skill work. They could do their exit tickets, whatever. And then I just flip flop them. And then I bring in my other grade, and then I do direct instruction with them, and I have them in the back of the room versus the front of the room. So, luckily for me, I have the desks in the front and tables in the back. And literally, I just flip flop them, and we all sit around a table, and they've got their whiteboards, they've got their books, and in an ideal world, the other group is working really diligently, quietly, just getting along and not causing any trouble and staying on task. It's the best that we can do. And despite teaching them how to be independent, there's days that they just physically cannot be independent. But I just really, again, this year in particular, I've really working with individuals. You know what? So and so really isn't just getting it. Let's just sit down right here. The rest of you can go. And I'm just going to sit down and get it with you. We're just going to figure it out and move on. And just to be flexible. Uh, it's really, I've been doing it the whole time. So when the idea of math menu and having kids doing independent work, well, that's just something you have to do when you're teaching two different grades math, because whether they're the other grade is doing literacy, or if you can come up with some other way, some other thing that they can do, or if you had extra support staff in the classroom, they might be doing something different. But that's not the case. There's no other support staff in my classroom. So they're on their own. And like I said, sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. But worst case scenario, they're still doing math. They're, engaging in conversation. They know I'm going to hold them accountable, but I'm not going to, drop what I'm doing because I see them doing something wrong. Because quite frankly, they can take care of that themselves. And they usually do because they like the rules. They like to follow the rules. And they don't like when other students don't, because they feel this obligation towards me to make sure that the rules are being followed, which, is kind of a little tongue in cheek there, because you know how that works. But, as far as going back to Matt's question about the end of the school year and knowing the kids, the other beauty is I talk to the fourth grade teacher every day. I know what's going on with them. I know what the struggles of those kids. But when they walk in my room, they start again with a clean slate. I take what I know and I put it in the back of my head, and I just assume I don't know anything about them. And then I let them show me. And the difference is the personality of the teacher. Ken, my fourth grade teacher, she's not going to teach in the same style as I will or I do. That's not how she works. And she doesn't have to, right? But when I walk into that classroom, I don't lower my expectations of those kids. And I talk to them in the way that I would talk to my fifth graders in my classroom. And in fact, the fourth graders come in for a vocabulary lesson every day. And I talk to them the same way I do to my fifth and sixth graders, So the other beauty about this small school is you're going to love this, Matt and Ken. I know you are. In fifth grade, all the schools in the district, we take our kids to a camp called Camp Keewaydin in Salisbury, Vermont. And it's a 1-week environmental program. And we stay overnight in cabins, and we take the kids for a 1-week. It's an environmental camp. And so all of us teachers who know each other very well hang out. We go on excursions and investigations with the kids. We know the camp counselors because we've been going there forever. And it's this great experience where the kids get to spend a whole week together, which is, again, that's before sixth grade. So now I, at the end of fifth grade, I really know them, and we have some great experiences together. And those are the kinds of things that, can't you make a connection to the things that we did, the challenges we, overcame, the risks we took, and just the quality of time that we spent together is just another kind of bonus to moving into the next grade with me.
I love that. I think the leverage, the care, and also it feels like every thing that you do is so purposeful and impactful. When you're doing something for kids, I feel like they realize that you are doing your very best to guide them as best as you can. I guess the one question that I have kind of remaining is, it probably feels like you're teaching a little bit in an island. And when you go outside to get support or guidance, that whether it's curricularly, am I making the best curriculum decisions? Instructional practice, am I delivering instruction? I know that I'm delivering in the way that I can handle, but as you acquire thoughts and ideas from others, what is your way of tapping into, whether it's a professional learning network or working with colleagues, since you are the representative of not one but two grade levels in not one, not two, not three, not four, possibly more subject areas? Where are you going to get the support that maybe earlier in your career, earlier in this position, you felt like, am I pulling from the standards the greatest points and pieces of value? Am I making decisions and feeling like I'm doing the best job I can? Or where are you getting that support from that actually directly connects to your classroom environment and situation?
So when I worked at the central office, I connected with all sorts of teachers, like all the teachers in all the schools. Like I put myself into positions where I could get to know what's happening in the school, uh, what curriculum strategies are happening, what professional development are people doing. I took on all the jobs that I could so that I could get more and more invested in what's happening at the granular level, really, with the schools. And the superintendent I worked with at the time was more than willing to let me go to the high school and hang out with the kids. And I was in Rotary at the time, and I took on the student Rotarians, and I, grabbed high school kids to go there. Because I was now kind of part of the community anyway. My kids went to school with the teachers' kids. And so I had already had a relationship with the teachers in the district as well as the principals in the district. So, as not really not on the same level as the principals, but as a colleague, because I was also on school boards. So prior to, so I've known all these players for so many years that when I go to PD, I ask for help. And then I take what I learn and I apply it. And I'm a very not retrospective. Yeah, retrospective, right? I really take what I'm not doing, what I feel like I'm not doing well, and really look at it. And I go to my principal and I say, you know what? Am I doing it right? If, would you make suggestions? Because I also have a relationship with a principal who is in my classroom all the time. And I'm not afraid to say, am I just failing at this? Is this really just not what I should be doing? Would you recommend something else? Like, I don't care if I'm doing it wrong. Just tell me I'm doing it wrong. Or what would you think that I could do differently? So I guess being open to criticism, constructive criticism, being open to really listening to your administrator when he or she is doing your evaluation, and taking that as something that's helpful instead of just pointing the finger and telling you you're doing something wrong. That's a big thing. I think I take from my previous experience is that that's their job. Their job is to make you a better teacher. And if you're so afraid of hearing what they have to say, you know what? I've cried. Sure, I'll take it. Take it on the chin. I'll cry today and move on and figure out what to do next tomorrow. Like, no big deal. Like, I don't know what's the big deal, but really just I find that teachers are completely open with sharing and providing information. And if I want something, I can say, hey, Matt, you got a solution for, this class or that class? And if people ask me, I just say, oh yeah, try this, do that. So I think just the great thing about teachers is their willingness to share their resources and their knowledge, and all you have to do is ask.
Can I add an amendment or additional component? The I'll just add on, being a male in elementary, often getting resources outside of what is in my curriculum is in a very, um, we'll say, uh, girly font, or it might have some attributes that don't necessarily represent, like my wife's a fourth grade teacher with me, things that she's pulling goes along with her aesthetic a little bit different maybe than
Uh-huh.
mine is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at something and it's totally not my style, but I know it's a good resource, it makes me feel like, can I really use that, or does it just doesn't work. It doesn't look like it looks like I stole something from someone else to fill some time. I guess what I would like for you to kind of speak to is, outside of your community who totally gets what you're going through, when you go to a conference or you connect with people outside of an environment like yours, what is your almost vetting process to say, like, that's not quite, that could work in my environment, but I'd have to adapt a ton of it to work in my classroom because of, you know, the population amount, the doubling grades, any of those type features. How often do you feel like you're going to outside resources compared to just feeling like, oh, I'm pretty unique, that was a cool idea, but I'm going to need to make it my own instead? I guess is the best way to ask it. Because you're using your resources locally incredibly well, but that's what I think a lot of us end up doing. But when we're striving for creativity, or I I'm not the one that can go onto Twitter and just search a hashtag and be able to find something, or go on to Teacher Pay Teachers, because most of those things just don't quite fit.
I totally agree with that for sure. Um, I I guess I don't have a whole lot of extra time
Perfect
to be
answer.
networking outside of my
Yeah.
community. That I'm a big networker. Don't get me wrong. I love networking. I love to go to conferences. I love to meet new people. I'm a big proponent of asking lots of questions and finding out. Like, I'm looking for the nut, right? Like you said, like, what is the biggest concept that this person offers, and how can I make it my own? Because nine times out of 10, it's not going to work. It just is unfeasible. We don't have enough kids to do that project. Like when we look at subscriptions, you got to have 30 kids. I don't have 30 kids. We don't even have 30 kids in our school. What do you like? How do we get a subscription for that when we only have 5 kids in one grade or whatever? So I guess um, I don't do a whole lot of that greater networking. Not because I don't like to, not because I don't think it's valuable. It's because I work full time. I am, currently negotiating a new contract for the teachers. My husband owns his own plumbing business, and 2 of my kids work for that. I'm a grandmother. I'm a blogger. I, wrote a book recently, and I'm trying to write another book. So, quite frankly,
You're a little busy. Yeah.
but I think that I'm a little busy, but you know what? I think that that's what the kids appreciate, like the realistic stuff. Like when I told them I wrote a book, they all insisted that their parents buy it. I'm like, but you're not even gonna want to read it. They're like, oh, we're buying it. Well, they have read it, and they keep throwing it back at me. Like a couple of students keep throwing it back at me, like, "Oh, is that your brother Tim that said that, or was that Michael?" I'm like, you really read my book. Um, so I don't know. I think that those. I'm family of 10. I'm a natural networker. I'm the ninth out of the 10. I have to ask questions. You know what? Survival of the fittest, man. If you can't figure it out by yourself, then you're you're on
Yep.
your own.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You're on your own.
It's a good way to put it.
That makes total sense. So I want to jump into our exit ticket, which is the same 4 questions we ask every guest every week. Question number 1: what is the best thing a teacher can do to make a student school experience better?
Greet them at the door. greet them at the door before they enter your classroom every day, and have something positive to say. Have a great saying of the day, like today was terrific Tuesday, and whether they thought it was going to be terrific or not, I just made them say it to me. Sometimes I say, "You're great," and they'll say, "I'm great." I'm say, "No, you tell me I'm great," and I tell you you're great, and we're great. And then they walk in the door and they sign in. So have them make sure that you say hello. I stand in the hallway and greet all the kids as they get off the bus, as do all the teachers. So
That
that's easy.
oh,
That's an easy thing to do.
totally. What is the best piece of advice you've received? Could be from a colleague, a supervisor, or even a student.
I guess just to enjoy what you're doing. Find joy in the teaching day. Look for the things that make you happy in the day, and really try not to focus on the things that are the most frustrating during any given school day.
So, speaking of that, the next question will kind of really hit that one head on. So,
Oh no.
realistically, we all can understand that the school year goes in waves. For everyone, it might be around conferences, report cards, but there's days, possibly weeks, that we struggle to survive. Even, what do you feel like every educator needs to hear to help power up through those moments of struggle?
I think they need to hear that it's one day at a time, and that that the struggles aren't happening. That the kids aren't driving you crazy on purpose, right? They are. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that it sounds exactly what I want it to be. That it's not. It's don't take it personally. What's happening in your daily, what's happening every day in school is not personal. You shouldn't take it personally. That you have to really just acknowledge that it was a rough day. Tomorrow's going to be better. I can start from scratch, and I'm just going to have to start from scratch again. And to do things for yourself that make you feel better outside of school. Because I know that I can't leave school behind. I would love to walk away from the school and shut the door and give someone advice. You know what? Shut the door, go home, and just take a walk, and everything will be great. You know what? I'm wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. But just walk in with a positive attitude, hope for the best, and at the end of the day, say, well, that didn't work, or it did work, or embrace every day that's great. Celebrate those wins, because tomorrow may or may not be the same.
I really like that answer. I really like that answer. So, the last question, it's easy to fall into facilitating a repetitive classroom. What do you think is it that separates the teachers who are the ones who are constantly trying to change, innovate, and adopt new teaching strategies into their classroom?
Yeah, I just can't settle for the same thing. So I'm always change. I'm a change agent for sure. I guess the reason that I change or others change their routine is based on the kids that are in front of them. So if you know your kids well enough, you'll know that certain things will or will not work, and that trying to um, implement that same curriculum every year is just not going to work. That the environment has changed, that the issues are changing, that if you don't reach them where they are or what's happening in the world today, then you're really missing an opportunity. So um, I I hate going down the rabbit hole because that's a thing, once you start looking at new things. But knowing your kids, if you trust that you know your kids enough, then you can change your curriculum and you don't have to do the same thing. And I make more work for myself, I know, than is necessary. But at the same time, I feel like it's important to do, because then that goes back to the whole respect thing, where the kids know that you know them enough to say, hey, this is what these kids really like. I'm going to change it up to do what they really like.
I've enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you and what you do for education, big and small, in your district quite a bit. If our audience wants to stay connected with you, to continue to learn from you and learn about the ways of your classroom, what is the best way they can kind of keep touch and connect with you going forward?
They can do two things. One, if they wanted to email me, they could go to info@samanthabilivat.com, or go to my website, which is samanthabilivat.com. I do have a blog, and I'm hoping to do some more talks. And like I said, I'm hoping to write a book for incoming teachers on what to expect walking into a classroom.
Excellent. Thank you so much. On your website, is there a link to purchase your first book that you wrote?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We will link up to all of that on our show notes, which you can find wherever you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube. That information is linked below, as well as on our website at powereduup.com, and you can find all of that information to continue to learn from Samantha. Thank you so much for this conversation. I had a blast. I found it very insightful. I learned a lot, and also just I feel very grounded again. I think it's a quality conversation that educators need to hear, to remember that there's a lot of good that we do on a daily basis, and it is a struggle at times, but we do the best we can for students each and every day. So Samantha, thank you so much for your time. And Matt, why don't you take us on out of here?
Thank you very much for having me.
As we power down this episode, without a doubt, Samantha, you have left us feeling powered up. Thank you for the time, and everyone stay well. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on YouTube. Each week, we get to talk to amazing educators who are making a positive impact on the lives of students, their colleagues, administrators, and education as a whole. It's been such a privilege every week to be able to talk to these incredible individuals, learn from them, grow with them, and better myself and all of education through these conversations. If you haven't already, please consider sharing this with a colleague, someone who can benefit and be powered up from the experience of listening to these incredible conversations. Because of Powered Up, we are powering education by empowering you.